Welcome everybody to my speech. I want to show you how you can identify users. We have seen there are a lot of hackers around. You profile the hackers, but maybe you want to know who is behind the browser, who accesses your website. So I want to show you if this is possible or the difficulties with identifying users. We'll talk about browser fingerprinting, identifying users, and browser geolocation, and have some live demos ready to show here. So, browser fingerprinting, does everybody know what this means? Have you heard about that? It started, or my research in this topic started with the web page, which I realized is very interesting. It is from Electronic Frontier Foundation. It's called panopticlick.eff.org. There you can connect with your browser and click on a button which says Test Me, and then Panopticlick creates a browser fingerprint and tells you how many other browsers in the world or already connected to the site have the same fingerprint. So I thought, well, I myself are unique, but my browser, I use Firefox. Why should that be unique? A lot of other people use Firefox as well, but when I connected to the site and it told me, your browser seems unique among 1.5 million other browsers. So I got suspicious and wanted to know, how is that possible? So for a browser fingerprinting, you can use several parameters that the browser either sends you directly using a HTTP request. You have the headers in the HTTP request, which are sent to the server in every web request. And you can send, for example, JavaScript or a small piece of Java applet, Flash, to the browser, which is executed in the context of the browser and which can give you some information back. Last few months, also HTML5 features can be used if you have the newer browsers, Firefox, Internet Explorer. What else? They all now support some HTML5 tags, and these also very useful for browser fingerprinting. There are parameters that are very useful for the fingerprinting and others that do not differ from browser to browser. What we have seen with this Panopticlick is that, for example, the user agent string, font list, and the list of installed plugins, which you can access with JavaScript, gives you very much entropy. This means it's very different from browser installation to another browser installation. So what you are doing, you take all these parameters, let's say 40, 50, 60, and calculate a hash. For example, SHA1 hash, and this is like the fingerprint of your browser. Identifying user. So, what do you think? How can we identify a user? Now we know the browser is unique. We know this browser is returning again, but how do we know which user sits behind this browser? Do you have any ideas? Yes, please.
I heard about the opportunity to, I want to start at another point. If you have a link clicked before, the browser sets it to another color, like the visited CSS attribute. You can check that in JavaScript, and so you gain information on what websites have been visited previously.
Yeah, maybe you know which website he visited, but maybe you don't know who it is. So we want to know the name of this the name of this person.
So you're talking about a shared computer?
No, about single computers. So maybe the battery is very low here on this device. Well, internet users, it's a study which says that internet users enters about 8 times a day a username and password on a website. An internet user has about 25 web accounts, and he remembers about 6.5 different passwords. So this means the user himself provides the information who he is. So if I have a site where the user identifies himself and I have the browser fingerprint, I can combine this information. What sites are interesting? Most interesting are sites with a large user base and sites where the user can modify content or install or use applications. And maybe sites where security is not the primary goal. And what are these sites? Yeah, Facebook, social networking site, they have very large user bases. There the users identify themselves. And for example, in Facebook, you have the possibility to create applications. Everybody can create applications. So what we did, we are lecturer here at the University of Rapperswil, and we did a diploma work to create a proof of concept application, and this application is called Fingerprinter. It does much the same like Panopticlick. It creates a fingerprint of the browser, and it has some additional features. For example, it can compare fingerprints. Let's say you have one fingerprint and you want to know what changed between 2 fingerprints. You can configure every parameter. You can say, I want to use this parameter for the fingerprint or not. And all this information is stored in a database where you can do analysis. Then we created a second piece of code. It's a Facebook application which also creates a fingerprint. So the setup looks like this. You have the user with any browser, and he can directly connect to this fingerprint web server, or he can use Facebook, select an application in Facebook, and this application will forward the request to the fingerprinter server. Okay, and then we have the admin interface where we can configure and use the fingerprint statistics tool and so on. So I want to show you this fingerprinter application. So I connect to the server which is hosting this application, looks like this. And here you have the possibility to take a fingerprint. Now it's analyzing these parameters, and it creates a unique fingerprint. Here you see the hash I explained before, and it tells me hello guest. It doesn't know who I am. Okay. Okay. Now I see some information here. For example, in a short view, what information is sent to the server. For example, which browser I use, which languages the browser supports, time zone, operating system, and so on. Or I can have a look at the fingerprint details, and here we see all the fingerprint parameters that are used for this fingerprint. And you see the font list and the plugin list, they are quite big. So this contains a lot of entropy. So now I close the browser and I open Facebook. I'm not responsible what you see now. I don't know who is posting anything to my pinboard here. But I want to show you this Fingerprinter. Here you can configure or define applications you want to use. One of these applications which is published with Facebook is Fingerprinter. And this application is reached in the first phase. In the background, a fingerprint is created. You see here it displays my name and my Facebook ID and created a fingerprint in the background. Now I close the browser again, or I can delete private data. If I found it. I don't find it, but it deletes it in the background if I close the browser. So if I go to the Fingerprinter application again and take a fingerprint, now I have been recognized with my Facebook username. So I'm not logged in Facebook anymore, but because I have the fingerprint of the browser related to my Facebook user ID, the browser can identify my identity. So do you see any sense in doing this? It was just a proof of concept to try out how this works, which parameters are very useful and which are not so useful. But what could this functionality be used for? Any ideas? In e-banking, good example. For example, in e-banking, you don't have to provide secure ID, no SMS tokens. You connect with your browser and you're logged in. Well, maybe that's not the case you meant. But for example, if you have an attack on e-banking where the session is hijacked of a logged-in user, then normally the attacker comes with another browser. This means you could make a browser fingerprint of your user after he logged in, store that, and if you have the same session with another fingerprint, then you know maybe this session has been hijacked. So you could say, hey, please provide an SMS token again, or please verify the transaction you did. So it's also called fraud detection, for example, in e-banking. And it's very useful because the bank can implement this functionality and the user does not have to change any of his behavior. But the bank can say, okay, something is strange with this connection, and do some things like SMS token or pose him security question or what else. You could also use this for session tracking. This means browsers delete the cookies after a session. So you can say for a remember me functionality, for example, if you want to be logged in a service which is not so critical, you can use this functionality. Or it may be used for statistics, marketing, to create profiles of users. Also in investigations where you want to identify, for example, stalkers or someone who sent an email over a webmail account and wanted to be anonymous, and you want to find out who was that. So you would have a possibility to find out an identity. Normally you only see the IP address, and then you need a court order to identify the user behind this IP address. So it's not always easy to create a browser fingerprint. There are some pitfalls. For example, if something changes in these parameters, like you update your browser or you update the plugin, you install a new extension, you install an application that installs new fonts, then every time browser fingerprinting changes. And the more parameters you use for the fingerprinting, the better is the uniqueness, but the lower is the chance that you don't identify the same browser again. And you have a cross-domain problem. This means you have to install this functionality on every website where you want this browser tracking. So if you want it in Facebook, you need a Facebook application, and this application must connect to the fingerprint server. And if you have other sites which you want to track, you have to install at least a JavaScript. But you know this from Google Analytics. It's the same there. When we did this research, there was also news about EverCookie. EverCookie is like a super cookie. Maybe you know the normal cookie, but EverCookie does not only use the normal cookie from HTTP, it uses a lot of other information to store a session. And this is the list from the EverCookie website where everywhere an information about the session can be stored. So you see also in this HTML5 there are new functionality for storing information persistently on the computer. And very important is the local shared objects from Flash, because the Flash local objects is used by different browser, and it's the same local shared object. So a feature of this framework is that you can use it cross-browser. You set a cookie in one browser and the cookie is available in another browser as well. And cookies that or storing locations that have been deleted can be recovered by this framework. Want to show this? You can try out yourself. It's on the semi.pl EverCookie website. You find the whole description here. And here you see the example. Now my user ID is undefined. And I see here the storing locations. And I can click here to create a new cookie, a super cookie. And now it writes the cookie value to different locations where possible. So you see we have 41. Now I close Internet Explorer and open Google Chrome. And now you see it found the cookie in the LSO data first, local start object, and recreated the other cookies. So I changed the browser. I can delete the cookies in the browser, but this LSO data remains. So for example, if you delete here internet data, delete it, close the browser, open again. We'll see if it's really deleted. You see LSO data is still available. So if you want to delete this cookie, you have to use this functionality. First this one, and then Flash player. Now it connects to a website. All the configuration of this Flash is done on this website. And here I see the semi-PL. I can delete it. And now we shouldn't have an EverCookie anymore. So it's undefined. But who is deleting all these cookie and storing locations? So now we know the user, we can track the user, we can track him with different browsers. Maybe we want to know where the user is. Maybe you have heard of localization of mobile phones. It's possible. It has been in the media because of this iPhone tracker story, where the cell IDs and Wi-Fi data has been stored on the iPhone and written to the backup. But did you know that you can also localize your laptop? Let's try that out. I take Google Maps web page as first sample. Now you realize here it's a small icon here. The page has loaded. If I click on this icon, then a new bar opens and it asks me, do you want to share your location? And if I say yes, then we have to wait a little time. Or try it again. Okay, live demo effect. Well, doesn't seem to work here. Let's try it on my own page. Well, this did not work. Try it again. Okay, doesn't seem to work. One last try. No, it doesn't work. It gives me the coordinates, but it gives me only the coordinates based on the IP address, and that's in Zurich. And that's not the correct one. If it works correctly, you have an exact location of this building here in Rapperswil. We'll try again later. So what happens? Here is the sample map Google. You click on this button and then you are localized to this building here. You can disable this functionality in Internet Explorer, in Firefox, and here you see also a URL. This is the geolocation service provider. So how is this possible? This is a new feature of the browsers called geolocation, and in JavaScript you can issue a function. It's called getCurrentPosition, and it returns you the coordinates of your browser. But how does this work? JavaScript issues this getCurrentPosition requests. The browser asks your network interface, your wireless card, what access points do you see? And then it retrieves this list of access points. Let's say you see here HSR or SCS3 and MAC address and signal strength. and it creates a list of all this information and sends it to the service provider, to the geolocation service provider. This returns longitude and latitude and the address, and an accuracy information where you see how exactly is this position. And different geolocation providers are Skyhooks, Google, Apple, and others. That's how such a request looks like. You have a post request, JSON, and below you see MAC address, SSID, and signal strength. And in return you get coordinates and an address. How was this database created? You know all these street view cars which drive around and collected Wi-Fi information, so they also put these GPS coordinates to the access points they have detected. There are other providers like navigation providers which also create this database. And if you use such services, then you send your list of access points, and maybe the database has already 3 of them in it, and you send a 4th one so it can include this new Wi-Fi access point, and so the database is continuously updated with iPhones, with laptops, with Androids, and what else. What can you use it for? You can use it for services, location-based services, to show search results which are near you, for example, find restaurants and so on. Or you can use it to track users or find criminals. So, such a Trojan horse. I want to show if this one works here. What I did, I created a small application which outputs this information which is visible from your wireless card. So these are all the access points which can be seen from my laptop here, and this information is sent to the geolocation provider. You could also take this information and send it to a web server, for example. Run this script in the background every 1 minute, and then the one that receives this information could locate you based on this information. So I tried out here if it works on the command line. I write this information into a file formatted in JSON, and then I invoke MAC to coordinates. Okay, again, it doesn't work. Well, here I'm prepared. I did a little movie which shows you this, the same what I did now. So I can list. It was at my home. I see 3 access points at my home. I write this in the file list.txt. and to send it to the geolocation service provider. And here I have the exact position, or the position where the street view car drove through. It's not exactly where I live, but it's near where I live. Maybe I can show it here. I collected a few files while traveling around, and here you see I was in Zurich, no, in Bern, the railway station in Bern. Or another example, in Bern-Bümplitz. So I let a script run on my laptop that collected this information, and what I also did is put it in a KML file, all these coordinates. Okay. It doesn't want to work. I'm sorry. Okay, but now you see the idea. I went to Bern one day and let this script run, and now you can locate everywhere where my laptop saw some Wi-Fi access points. He collected the MAC addresses, and afterwards I sent the information to Google to give me back coordinates, and now I can draw it in Google Earth, for example. Good. Now let's vote. Good. First question. Now, which parameter should not be used for a browser fingerprinting? Well, very well. IP address is not very useful for browser fingerprinting. In the meantime, I did the demo again. Now it works. So it found my location quite exactly here. How is the user identified in the fingerprinter proof of concept? Yeah, good. Number A is correct. Which recommendation does not help preventing a browser localization? Not. Well, number B is correct. So even if you disconnect from an access point, your wireless card sees the access points that are available. Even if you're not connected, it collects the information from the air.
But how does it ask Google if you disconnect from the access point?
Over your, for example, unlimited connection or LAN connection or what else? Yeah, you're right. If this was your only, I would say if you are in the office, for example, and you're connected to your wired network and you don't disable the Wi-Fi interface, then you still can be located. Which technology allows most accurate localizing. Yeah, correct. Wi-Fi access point, because they have the highest density in populated environments. So, and now my speak is over, but now the live demo works. I clicked on this sign here. Try it again. It's not a fake. Now we have an exact match. And it depends, if you have a lot of access points, then the positioning is quite exact. If you only have 1 or 2, it's more difficult. But you can send one MAC address to this location service and it returns you the coordinates for this MAC address. This could also give interesting possibilities. For example, you can analyze where are Wi-Fi access points distributed, because you have the first 3 bytes are defined from the creator, from the company of the access point, and you only have to count up the last 3 bytes, and then you can locate where on the world have these devices been sold, for example. Or you find the MAC address somewhere in a log file or while doing a penetration test, and you can say, where is this access point located? May I answer some questions? Please?
How easy is it to spoof browser fingerprinting?
It's very easy. You have to change one parameter that is used for the fingerprinting. For example, if I modify the language I accept, or if I modify the browser header, or if I disable JavaScript, for example, then I won't be recognized with the same fingerprint as before. But I leave it like that, then I will be recognized again. And there is also private surfing mode now in newer browser, where a lot less information is sent to this fingerprinting application. But the problem is, as long as only you use this private surfing functionality, you are identifiable. So it depends how many others use the same functionality. And you can, for example, use an anonymity network like Tor, for example, that strips out this information, and then you're not as easy identifiable. Does this answer your question?
No, I was actually asking something different. If you come to my website, I fingerprint you.
Yes.
Is it easy for me to submit the fingerprint to Swiss TV afterwards? Your fingerprint. And have Swiss TV identify me as Walter?
Either you need the same JavaScript code on your website and on the Swiss TV website, and they collect the information like Google Analytics. You have to provide this functionality on every website where you want to track the user. So Google Analytics does the same, I think not as detailed on browser fingerprinting, but on user behavior and which websites visited the user and which URLs visited the user. Other questions? Please? Yeah, we didn't use it so far in real environments. We used it only for testing, but we have seen projects where smaller fingerprinting is used for session hijacking detections. For example, in Facebook as well, if a lot changes, then you ask to log in again. Sometimes you have realized it maybe. And I think more and more such services like eBay or so are implementing this kind of checks.
Can you use something similar to this for tracking malicious actors? As using it as a plugin?
Yeah, we didn't use it so far in real environments. We have seen projects where smaller fingerprinting is used for session hijacking detections. For example, in Facebook as well, if a lot changes, then you ask to log in again. Sometimes you have realized it maybe. And I think more and more such services like eBay or so are implementing this kind of checks. Please?
Can you give the audience any more tips to protect their privacy, which are easy to use? For example, I know of a Firefox extension which removes the LSOs in a periodic time, but yeah, have you seen maybe like an extension which randomizes, for example, list of fonts installed?
No, I haven't seen. I've seen browser extensions where you disable, for example, JavaScript, or you change the user agent and so on. But randomization, I don't know, except in Tor networks where you use Tor as a proxy. But I'm not sure how anonymous you are behind proxy. Depends who operates this proxy or Tor nodes. But if you really want to be anonymous, use a new browser, limit the functionality, use proxies or like Tor network to serve. Or use a live CD, which you use only for this task, for example. Okay, then thank you very much for your attention and have a nice day.